You're watching CNN. I'm Brooke Baldwin. This slaughter in France Wednesday, it is heartbreaking, it is enraging, and perhaps most sadly of all here, it's frustrating because all we know, the apparent motivations behind the mass murder at the satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo are not new. The warped beliefs of radical Islam to the attack last month that killed 2 innocents at that coffee shop, that chocolate shop in Sydney, Australia. That same month, it played a part in the slaughter of 132 children, 13 adults at that school in Peshawar, Pakistan, and it's believed to be behind the murder of a soldier outside of Canada's Capitol building in Ottawa. These are places supposedly of peace. For months now, we have seen how religious extremism has ripped apart war-torn Syria and Iraq. Let me bring in our senior international correspondent, Nick Robertson, and Dr. Jasser, the president and founder of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. Gentlemen, welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Hey, Brooke.
Nice to be with you, Brooke.
I should point out Dr. Jasser also wrote a book entitled Battle for the Soul of Islam, an American Muslim patriot's fight to save his faith. So, Dr. Jasser, let me just begin with you. You know, as we think about, and there are too many to even, talk about right now, these different attacks. I mean, are all these different separate attacks part of this larger goal, the extremists using, cartoons and education sort of as catalysts with this ultimate goal of this massive Islamic State?
Yeah, and I think it's very important to try not to separate them. I think ultimately they're all related to a common issue, is that Islam, I think, is in the same time in history as what Christianity was in the 17th and 18th century, is that we are right now in a battle within the House of Islam against theocracy and the theocrats, the clerics that want an Islamic State, not just ISIS, but all Islamic states. Remember, you have the Organization of Islamic Cooperation of countries like Saudi Arabia, Iran, Pakistan, that really don't believe in the secular state, believe in an Islamic state of some kind or other. And these Islamic groups, the radicals, feel that the biggest threat to them are secular states that separate church or mosque and state. So they want to sow discontent, create isolationism of these countries so that liberty is not infused into those countries. And then Muslims within France. Remember, one of the people killed at the magazine was a Muslim, a copy editor, and a Muslim police officer. So they want them to feel uncomfortable so that the secular Muslims, even in the West, become estranged, and they divide the West so that the ideology of liberty does not confront political Islam.
But it's the why do it through bloodshed. Let me come back to you. Nick Robertson, the last time I think I talked to you on TV, you were walking through that bloodied Pakistani school. I mean, you cover too many of these attacks. Do you agree with Dr. Jasser?
Absolutely, and if you look at some of those radical Islamists who are sort of, and this is what his explanation there is, a wonderful explanation, and within that sort of desire to throw off the sort of Western values of democracy and have theocratic states, you find the real radicals, and those real radicals are pushing essentially for a war without borders and a war without end, and you find them in Pakistan, you find them in Afghanistan, you find them in other places. I mean, you just listed some of the recent attacks over the past month. But let's look in Afghanistan this past week. An attack, a car bombing targeting European policemen there, killing 6 Afghan civilians, all of them Muslims. You look at the attack by a suicide bomber in Istanbul, in a tourist neighborhood, going into a police station just this week as well, killing a policeman there, another Muslim. So, this is a battle inside, as we hear. Some of the victims, like France, yes, not Muslims, but vast majority are.
One of the questions is, of course, how do we fight this ideology? But Zudi, when I think of ISIS, and now they're referring to themselves as the Islamic State. I mean, clearly the goal is to have this caliphate. Is it just geographic? Is it just to that region, or if they had their druthers, what would the goal be for these extremists?
It's not geographic. Is we have to hone in on the fact that we're distracted by calling it violent extremism and just about violence. That's a tactic. What they want is their goal is to get Muslims to want to die for jihad and Islamo-patriotism. So what separates me from the Fort Hood shooter or from the attacker in Ottawa that killed the parliament and attack our military, now attack our media, is that I want to die. I joined the U.S. Navy. I believe in secular patriotism for American nationalism. There are so many Muslims that believe in that nationalism. That's the battle between Islamo-patriotism for the global jihad versus Islamic belief in a personal faith and belief in our nation state as Americans. So that's how it has to be contextualized in our strategy to put monies and resources in a public-private partnership to engage Muslims about taking sides against the Islamo-patriots and the jihadists.
Precisely what I was thinking. It's almost like this, you need this public condemnation, especially from leaders, especially leaders in these Muslim nations. And just talking to Fareed Zakaria yesterday, his opinion, not enough of that has happened in the wake of what happened in Paris. Nick?
And if you're a leader of a theocratic state, why would you do that? Because you start to bring down the building blocks which keep you in power, which keeps your ideology afloat, even if you don't necessarily support the real radicals, even if the real radicals want to overthrow you. Saudi Arabia, an example of this, where the radicals, these real Islamo radicals would like to overthrow the royal family there. But that's they also would rather have a theocratic state. We talk about other political organizations, the Muslim Brotherhood being one of them. Saudi Arabia doesn't like the Muslim Brotherhood. But, without that voice of criticism, it is not going to bring about an adjustment, a course correction, an examination, and dealing with this issue as Christianity did and had to do.
It's incredibly frustrating. Let's have this conversation over and over and over again. I think it's so important to point out. Nick Robertson and Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, thank you both very much.